Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on a huge topic, maybe the biggest villain in all of human history, the devil, or Satan.
Right. An entity that has, it's shaped laws, it's started wars, it's defined morality for thousands of years.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to look at a pretty radical new analysis that says the history of Satan isn't about a monster with horns.
No, it's much more about political strategy, how we use language, and maybe most importantly, psychological projection.
So we're really tracing the biography of an idea.
That's a great way to put it. The source calls it the adventurous life, the Sergzeski Hayata of this abstract image. We want to show you how this concept was first, invented, and then how it was used.
Weaponized, really.
Absolutely. Weaponized to separate us from them.
And the immediate takeaway from this analysis is, well, it's a shock to the system. It argues that all the suffering we associate with the devil wasn't caused by some external jinn.
Not at all.
It says the real cause was our own wrong perception of it, our literal belief in it.
It really forces you to reconsider where evil comes from. If the devil is just a reflection of us, then its history is, well, it's our history, the history of human malice.
Okay, so let's follow that thread. We can't jump to the end without starting at the beginning. Where does this villain's resume get its start?
We have to go back to the foundational cultures. The source argues that the root concept of some kind of external evil force was first really spelled out by the Sumerians.
It's more formalized later.
Oh, much more. It really gains its theological weight with the rise of Zoroastrianism in ancient Persia.
And what was the big innovation there? What did they do differently?
They created this powerful cosmic duality, a clear separation of divine beings. You had the good guys, the Ahuras, the gods.
And the bad guys.
And the bad guys, the devas. These devas were the, you could say, the conceptual seeds for what would later become devils, jinn, iblis.
So at this point, it's more of a team of rivals, not one single Satan.
Exactly. But that split, that separation was absolutely vital because after the Babylonian exile, that Zoroastrian idea of the Deva Vesta starts to morph. It finds new life in Jewish folklore.
Okay, and that's where we start to see names we might recognize.
That's right. This is where a figure like Asmodeus or Asmodayu first shows up. He's in the Book of Tobit, which is an apocryphal work, a folk legend.
What about the fallen angel, the classic story, the angel kicked out of heaven? When does that come into play?
That narrative gets clearer a bit later, especially in another apocryphal text, the Book of Enoch. But the key development, according to the source, happens during the Two-Temple Judaism period.
Right.
The source calls this a crisis year.
A crisis year. What does that mean?
It means there was so much internal strife, foreign occupation, that it created this widespread belief that the Jewish people were literally occupied by devils.
So their political problems became a spiritual invasion.
Perfectly put. And the reaction to this is so telling. You look at a group like the Essenes. Their name, Therapeuticae, it means healer.
They were the medics.
Spiritual medics, yeah. They were obsessed with purity and terrified of contamination. So to fight this perceived occupation, they developed this incredibly organized system.
Which was?
They invented thousands of specific angel names. It was like a spiritual bureaucracy of good designed to drive out the thousands of devils they themselves had manufactured as the cause of everything from a fever to a bad harvest.
They created the disease and the cure at the same time.
It's a self-perpetuating system. And looking through this lens, the source suggests Jesus, who it says followed some Essene traditions, basically dedicated his life to destroying this devil's state.
The Civitas Diaboli.
Right, to establish the state of God, the Civitas Dei. His main tool was exorcism. That was the central conflict of the era.
And this all feeds back into the main argument, right? That the devil has always been a tool for othering, for Shaitan.
That's the constant thread through history. Every religion, every sect, when they face an opponent, they devilize them, or they just take the other religion's god and call it a devil.
It turns a political fight into a holy war.
Of course. The rhetoric is almost identical across the board. Jesus calls his enemies sons of the devil.
The Quran refers to the prophet's opponents as Satan.
And it doesn't stop. Centuries later, Catholics and Protestants are calling each other Satan. And look at today. America calls Iran the Great Satan.
And Iran calls America the Great Satan.
The enemy is never just wrong. They have to be cosmically, fundamentally evil. It justifies anything.
It's a terrifyingly effective strategy. Okay, let's fast forward. This literal belief in the devil must have had a breaking point. Where did it have its most devastating impact?
Medieval Europe, without a doubt. This is where demonology hits its peak, and the consequences are just catastrophic.
This is the Inquisition.
This is the Inquisition. It's the moment where the devil is no longer just a metaphor for evil. He is a physical being who can sign contracts, who can have sex with humans.
And the source material is, it's brutal in its critique of this period.
It has to be. It argues that the institutional church became the very thing it claimed to be fighting. The details of the accusations are just grotesque.
Things like kissing the devil's behind.
Exactly. Millions of innocent people, mostly women, the poor, anyone who was different, were accused of collaborating with the devil. And they were subjected to torture by inquisitors who truly believed they were doing God's work.
The numbers are staggering.
Over 100,000 people were burned alive. The logic was that fire would cleanse their souls.
Unbelievable.
And this is where the source makes its most challenging point. It says that the church, by inventing thousands of devils in its books and then killing real humans in their name, became a bigger devil than any jinn Satan.
That's an incredibly strong statement.
It is, but it's making a historical judgment, not just a theological one. The point is, the jinn devil never burned anyone alive. Humans, acting on their beliefs, did.
So what stopped it?
Politics. The French Revolution finally abolished the Inquisition courts. It took a secular power to end a theological crime wave.
That brings the culpability right back down to earth, to us. Which leads us to the next big question. How does this critical analysis apply to the Quran?
Right.
You have the Adam and Iblis story right at the foundation. How does the source reconcile that with this idea that Shaitan is just a projection?
This is where we have to really dig into the language. Because religions, they build on geological layers. Islam is part of that ancient Semitic tradition.
A tradition where the Adam and Iblis story was already known?
It was already part of the cultural air that Arabs and Jews were breathing. The source argues that the Quran uses Shaitan not mainly as a creature, but as an attribute, a metaphor for pride and opposition.
Okay, this is where the statistical breakdown in the source is so illuminating for you, the listener.
It really is the proof in the pudding, so to speak. Out of 88 verses that mention Shaitan, the source claims that 58 of them refer directly to human beings.
Not demons, people.
People. The political opponents of the prophet. The rich, arrogant leaders in Mecca. The hypocrites in Medina. Shaitan is used as a kafir's attribute, an attribute of the disbeliever.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. There's a verse that says something like, "We have appointed for every prophet and enemy devils from mankind and jinn." The human devils are described as the ones whispering deceptive words to each other.
So the word just becomes a synonym for a cunning, malicious opponent.
Precisely. And the rest, about 20 or so mentions, they refer to internal psychological states.
Like pride, envy.
Megalomania, pride, envy, stinginess, even forgetfulness. These abstract vices are personified, made concrete by calling them shaitan.
So that completely reframes the Adam and Iblis story. If it's not a literal history, what's its purpose?
The source sees it as a powerful foundational analogy. Iblis, or Azazel, refuses to bow to Adam. Why? He says, "I'm created from fire, he from clay."
It's pure arrogance.
It's arrogance based on origin. And that perfectly mirrored the attitude of the powerful men of Mecca and the Jewish tribes of Medina, who looked down on the prophet and his followers for being from a lower status or a different lineage.
So the story is a warning.
It's a direct warning to them. Your end will be like Iblis's. Your pride will be your downfall. And this brings up a crucial point the source makes about divine dialogue.
Okay.
When the scripture says Allah makes a mountain speak or the dead speak, it's not literal audio. It's about conveying an undeniable message. So the conversation between God and Iblis has to be understood that way, symbolically.
It's a metaphysical truth, not a courtroom transcript.
Exactly.
So let's take that linguistic approach and apply it to some common phrases. What about seeking refuge from Satan, or the idea of being possessed?
The command to seek refuge from the accursed Satan when you recite the Quran, that's almost always taken literally.
Right, from some invisible demon hovering over you.
But the source argues its primary context was for the prophet when he was publicly proclaiming the revelation, the Firman Okuma. He was basically broadcasting this message in the middle of a hostile city.
So the Satan was.
The Satan he needed refuge from was the two-legged human shouting him down, disrupting him, trying to undermine his proclamation right there in the streets of Mecca. Certain verses seem to back this up.
And this whole problem of literal interpretation is made worse by the nature of the Arabic language itself.
It is. Arabic is a very sensory, very emotional language. Historically, it didn't have the same developed capacity for, say, Greek-style philosophical abstraction.
And when you can't abstract something, you personify it.
You make it concrete. You make it physical. Abstract fear or desire becomes a literal demon, which explains why you see these mythological devils involved in physical acts.
Like the incubus and succubus in medieval Europe.
Exactly. That's mirrored in Arab mythology with devils like Silat or Geabani, which people believe could literally assault you. It's sexual fear or guilt or even just a nightmare being turned into a physical attacker.
So what about devil striking? That phrase is in the Quran. How does the source explain that?
That phrase is the perfect example of the Quran using the audience's own idiom. Back then, Arabs called things like a stroke, paralysis, or an epileptic seizure devil striking.
It was their medical diagnosis.
It was the only diagnosis they had. So when the Quran uses that phrase, it's not validating the diagnosis, not at all.
It's just using their language.
It's using their language to make a point they'll understand. It's like if I said someone has chicken blindness today, I'm talking about night blindness, I'm not claiming chickens are involved.
Right.
The Quran's goal isn't to teach neurology. It's using a known phrase to describe a state of distress while talking about, say, economics or justice.
So the revelation is meeting people where they are, using their worldview, a flat earth, seven heavens, jinn, Satan, as a kind of launch pad.
A launch pad, an instrument. That's the critical conclusion. Those things are the vehicle, not the destination. The core message is always monotheism, tawhid, and justice and ethics.
Which brings this entire deep dive full circle, back to the anatomy of the devil. If Satan isn't a creature of fire, then where does all that wickedness actually live?
It lives inside us. It's entirely within the human psyche. The devil stops being an entity and becomes a safat, an attribute.
Which the source defines as?
The personification of wickedness, intelligence, and malice. It's pure, concentrated, human-made evil.
Let's get really specific for our listeners here. The source actually provides a kind of psychological map of where this internal devil is.
It does. It calls it our dark, hidden face, our karanlık yüzümüz.
It's our subconscious, our sure ultimas.
And using Islamic psychological terms, it's the part of our soul that commands evil. The nefsimizin kutuluru emre'in tarafudur. This isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's the part of us that actively drives us towards selfishness and harm.
And there's a fascinating link to modern biology.
There is. This internal drive is identified with our limbic system, that primal animal brain we share with all creatures. It's about survival, fight or flight, immediate gratification.
So the devil is just a projection of that.
It's a projection mechanism, a yansıtma mekanizması. We take all that raw, untamed, primal stuff inside us, and we project it onto an external, invisible monster. Because that's easier than confronting it in ourselves.
So the witch trials, the wars, the terror, it was all a tragic distraction, fighting a shadow on the wall.
A complete misdirection of energy. If the devil is just the name we give to our own weakness, our own malice and pride, then we've spent centuries looking in the wrong place. And that really challenges you, the listener, to move beyond these old ideas.
Because if the battle is internal,
then how much more urgent is it for you to stop looking for devils in the sky and start getting to know the one inside? To confront your own darkness, your own reality today.